I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-minute convos where I help you create a brand of your own unique, real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Joshua Glazer. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
It's not quite night here in LA. It's late afternoon, but it is a Friday.
Okay,
So
all right.
I'm at the computer trying to wrap up the week.
All right. Well, my friend, please do tell us which of your talents is responsible for us connecting at this time.
I think you reached out because I am a podcaster.
Most definitely.
I do a podcast called Rave Curious. That is about electronic music and the people who have dedicated their lives to it.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. Like, hey, you guys have amazing fun there, right? It's like you're just chilling and you're having a conversation. You all had fun, right, on that last conversation.
Exactly. The idea behind the podcast was, I've been a music journalist for almost 20 years, and I've mostly covered electronic music, and I've been in the club scene. I've thrown parties. I've done all these things. But the best parts with the DJs and producers that make this music often happen off the record. So it's not at the party. It's not when you're doing an interview. It's when you're just hanging out. And so my idea was to try to kind of recreate that situation where I don't go in with any questions. Oftentimes it is DJs who I know quite well, people who I've met over the years. Sometimes it's people who I've never met at all. But the idea is to spend an hour, just having a nice conversation and finding mutual ground that we inevitably have as lovers of dance music.
Yeah. I listen to the podcast and it's really fascinating what you can learn in a conversation. Like, LA is huge. And I live in LA and I get lost. It's really amazing the things you can pick up on that prepares you. And that's from me listening to the podcast and thinking now, okay, when I'm going to LA, I need to have a tour guide with me.
We do talk a lot about LA. Somebody put in our iTunes comments about a year ago that every time I mention Los Angeles, Berlin, or Detroit, which are three places I've lived, you're supposed to take a drink. So the idea was to have a drinking game. But yeah, it ends up being a lot about my life and the lives of the people I'm talking to. And I think as much as things are global nowadays and everyone's connected online, there is something to be said about having an attachment to where you are or where you're from or where you've been, and those places, even if more and more everybody talks the same, everybody dresses the same, everybody's kind of into the same music.
Yeah.
There is still nuances, and there is still distinct characteristics of a place. So I'm happy to hear that that comes across within the podcast.
Yeah, it does. And this is all the way from Trinidad, right? This is all the way from Trinidad. Well, who did you learn the skill of podcasting from?
I think I just learned from listening to a lot of podcasts. I was, I think reasonably early on the podcast thing in terms of as a listener. I discovered Mark Maron in 2010. When I found out about his podcast, and that was within, he had done maybe 40 or 50 at that point. I think now he's up to 500-600. But I got to I learned just from listening, and and Mark Maron in particular was definitely a big inspiration for wanting to do this. In fact, when I went to Vice originally, the podcast was originally part of Vice's podcast network via their Thump dance music website. When I first approached them with the idea, I pitched it as I was going to be the Mark Maron of techno. So,
and it worked.
Definitely, I do come from a background of having done some audio production in college. That was something I studied. So, some of the technical stuff was there, but honestly, I think any technical thing you need to know about podcasting, you can learn in an afternoon of Googling. So it's not a technical thing. It just really comes down to, wanting to talk to people, and I guess having 20 years of experience in this culture, as well as telling stories about this culture.
Yeah, you're definitely a conversationalist.
As I'm talking too much right now, absolutely.
No, I just you could hear it on the podcast. I don't think it's a bad thing though.
Yeah, I enjoy doing it, and there are definitely some episodes. I listen back and I think, oh man, I did not shut up. I didn't even let my guests speak.
But your audience gravitates to that, right?
I don't know. I don't know why my audience listens. I just know that they do, and that's really humbling that someone would want to listen to me share just weird old raver stories with people.
Will you continue to do it?
Yeah, as long as I can. It was a bit difficult in August. Vice shut down their dance music vertical, and with it, Rave Curious lost its home. But that was a moment of kind of retrospect and thinking, is this something I want to keep doing? And I felt immediately like, yes, it was. So we relaunched the podcast independently on ravecurious.com. And it's been going really well. We are now, not only on iTunes, which everyone's on iTunes and SoundCloud. We were just accepted on the Spotify,
Sweet.
Which still, they're still curating their podcasts. So rather than, I think there's 250,000 podcasts on iTunes. There's, I think, 10,000 or so on Spotify. So that felt really good to be accepted into that. We also just launched a partnership with Beatport, who are now broadcasting the podcast and video on their Facebook Live channel. And we just did the first one with some local LA DJs, Raiz, this week, and everyone was really happy with the results. So I think we're gonna keep doing that. So yeah, no plans on stopping anytime soon.
Tell me one other thing that you've done consistently over the last 3 years.
Well, my day job is I run a content marketing agency called Content Curious. It's actually, the podcast came first, Rave Curious, and then we kind of continued with the Curious theme on the naming. So I create custom content, journalism, marketing, various platforms for clients like Coachella. We just did something with the Electronic Music Awards that was on Twitter Live this year. We worked with F1F Fest, a bunch of really interesting projects and great clients. And if people want to learn more about it, they can go to contentcurious.com is where all that work is. And then ravecurious.com is the podcast, and you'll see a lot of similar connections within it all.
Yeah, which is really amazing. But before I even go into amazing and all my connections and that type of stuff, right? How does it make you feel?
How does it feel to have done all this, or to have it feels good. It feels it feels like it's felt really good to communicate with so many people, and to know that, for example, with the podcast, to know that there's fans out there that really enjoy it, and getting to have these conversations, whether it's really everything I do. My favorite part is always the conversation, whether it's talking to you right now, or talking to a guest on the podcast, or if we're in an editorial meeting for a magazine, that conversation, or meeting with a client and just coming up with creative ideas. It's the hard part is making turning these ideas into reality, but the actual conversation where you're just chopping it up and coming up with the ideas, that's definitely my favorite part, and why I do what I do.
Love it. Well, amazing audience, we are live with Joshua Glazer. Again, you could definitely check him out. He is on the podcast. He is the podcast host, my apologies, of Rave Curious, right? And again, it's really fascinating what he's created, again, by going into Content Curious. And you could definitely check that out at all the .coms, right? ravecurious.com, contentcurious.com. Joshua Glazer, let's switch gears for a moment now, my friend. Let me invite you into my time machine. That is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. Joshua, what is your earliest childhood memory?
Ooh, think, I could be wrong, but I think it was going to see the construction of our house when I was 2 or 3 years old, living in Pennsylvania. My parents rented an apartment for the first year or two of my life, and then at some point we moved into a house, and I remember actually going and seeing like the concrete mixer pouring the concrete that would become our house. So I think that's probably the earliest, somewhere around age 2 or 3.
Why do you think this memory is so clear?
I really don't know, but I distinctly remember, I think it was blue. I think the drum on the cement mixer was blue. I couldn't tell you why that is. I don't consider myself a particularly visual person. I'm definitely more of a writer, speaker, talker than I am a drawer or designer. Yeah. But yeah, that stands out.
Well, can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Sure.
Oh, I just love the idea that you're the content strategist, right? Or strategist, if you want. And it's intriguing, right? Like it starts from the raw cement, right? It's the thing that creates the stick-to-itiveness, if you would, right? It's the cement, It's the glue. And to see your fascination with that and to understand how it was the thing that was instrumental in everything else coming together. It's fascinating to me that you do that now. It seems as though you're intrigued by connecting things. It also speaks to your curiosity too, doesn't it?
I guess so. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. It goes to what what I was just saying about, liking the original idea, the creativity, it's the foundation.
Yes.
So it's of every creative endeavor. So yeah, it's kind of funny that my earliest memory is literally pouring a foundation.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And well, definitely blue seems to be your favorite color. I could be wrong, but it's. I mean, you're just wearing a blue shirt in this LinkedIn profile picture. Just saying, I'm not sure. What is your favorite color?
It could be that there is a blue water bottle and some blue beams in the office and blue couches in the workspace that I'm in right now in the office I'm in. So for all I know, the cement mixer was actually green. I would have put too much in. Oh, there's a wrapper from a blueberry protein bar from earlier today as well. So I'm just surrounded by a lot of blue at this moment.
It all connects, right? Even the concept of the blueprint. I mean, we could just go on and on, right?
Well, it does make me think, and this comes up a lot in these conversations in the storytelling I do on the podcast. A lot of the times, how I remember things is not how other people remember things, and it's there's often these little nuances within the story that like oh, and then I said, and then you'll talk to the person who was there, and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure you did something else. I'm pretty sure I did that. And it's interesting that we all have these, all of our memories are they are deceptive, and I think as long as the basic idea, the basic kind comes through in a story, I think that's fine. But it's always amusing to be halfway through a story and someone else who was there will just kind of look at you and be like, that's not how I remember it.
Exactly. Yeah. Even with the copy I've used for communicating what I'm achieving or adhere by these conversations, right? It's absolutely fascinating to me, the questions you get asked, and it's the same thing, and the responses then because it's a lot of people that have gotten those, right? But yeah, it's like we could have an entire conversation on that, right? That alone, the responses, and It's just amazing. Individuals see things in their own unique way, I believe.
Absolutely. And odds are when we get off this call and I go home and I tell my wife about our conversation today, I will probably remember it very differently from when it comes out. I'll listen to it and be like, oh, I don't remember saying that.
It's really amazing. If we fast forward, Joshua, to when you were 12 years old, though, what was your favorite song?
Age 12 was when I discovered the Beatles. So I remember that, that was really, if I can say there was one moment, that was the point when I started collecting records, and I never really stopped. So age 12 was very significant in that regard. Someone played me Sgt. Pepper's, and from that point I was like, okay, I need all these records. And then I discovered, more classic rock, and then alternative rock, and then dance music, and that was really, age 12 was really the point when the craving for the endless craving for new music came into my life, and it never really settled.
Amazing. All right, my friend. Hey, well, we have now arrived at our destination, Joshua. But before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. We're going to move pretty quickly here. Are you ready, Joshua?
Absolutely.
Joshua, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Yes.
Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have children?
I will have my firstborn, a boy, in about 5 weeks.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow, congratulations. Wow, make sure. So you said a boy, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you could definitely get a nice blue blanket, right?
Maybe that's why there's so much blue.
All right, congratulations on that. Do you believe in God?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I don't know.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Yes.
Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
Usually not.
How about 3 hours a week?
Yes.
What about screen time, the phone and the computer? Is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
It's probably about 8.
Joshua, after 1,001 conversations, in 3 months, I came up with a workbook. The name of it is called Yours. It stands for Your Own Unique Real Self. And the idea is to connect you while answering questions to your own unique real statement. If you, Joshua, had to share with us your own unique real statement, the statement that represents who you are, what would you say that is?
My own unique statement. I like what I put in my working, not working profile, which is reliable, reasonable raconteur.
Love it. Joshua, my friend, this is a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Just don't forget to tell a good story.
Yeah, love it.
It's kind of the best thing, the best thing that we humans do.
Rave Curious. Joshua Glazer, thank you for being on what is inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.